Today we're talking with Dave Heywood. Dave, why don't you go ahead and give our viewers a quick intro on who you are, what you've done.
Brilliant. So I'm Dave. I'm a senior marketer based out in the UK, and I wear a few different hats. So I'm senior marketing manager at an asset servicing business called Acorian. I founded and host the Marketing Careers Uncovered podcast. I consult with a few businesses on their approach to marketing and strategy. And just to cap things off, because I'm not busy enough, I also sit on the advisory board at my daughter's school and run my town's local cycling club as well. So lots and lots of different
Yeah.
hats there.
I wonder what sleeping ever did to you to make you hate it so much.
I've got my quintessential British prop, which is a cup of tea. I don't think it'll last the whole session,
Well,
but
let's see. I've got my quintessential cup of coffee for my American prop. So we both are representing here today, it sounds like. Great. Well, I always like to start these by just asking what kind of drew you into marketing originally? Is it something you studied in school and had a path for your whole life, or was it a roundabout into marketing? Like, kind of give us the background.
yeah, sure. It's really funny some of this stuff. You look back in the rearview mirror and you self-aggrandize quite a lot of this stuff. But I think if I look back and think about it, from a really early age, I was always quite interested in people and organizations that were building stuff and that were creating. I remember during secondary school, perhaps, I was about 12 to 14 or so, and I would always be drawn to the business section of the newspaper. Never mind all the comic strips and stuff. It was always that bit was quite interesting. All the wheeling and dealing. Over here in the UK, there's a organisation called Young Enterprise. They're a non for profit, and what they help people do is actually understand entrepreneurship in a really practical way. So what I had the opportunity to do when I was around 17 was the opportunity to co-found and run a real small business. So this was really, really exciting stuff. This
Wow.
idea of, well, you get some money to put into this, yeah, really small, yeah, Mickey Mouse volumes here. But the kicker here was, well, whatever you make, you guys can keep and divvy up. So there was about six or seven of us, all pulling together to create and sell products, take them to market, understand customers, how to engage with them, how to make them purchase. And it was a, do you know what? I really, really enjoy this. This
That's
is the kind of
awesome.
stuff I want to be doing.
Well, what did you make? What did you sell?
We we came up with this idea of let's go around to every school and have all the kids at these schools submit some drawings and artwork that can go into a calendar for the year. Because what parent would not feel the absolute urge and sort of low level guilt around not purchasing
Right.
a a calendar with little Timmy's artwork in there.
Exactly.
So we went around all these schools and just absolutely cleaned up. It was
Really? Well, that's a great example of knowing your target audience because, yeah, I think I always thought back to like when we got yearbooks as kids, like what parent is not going to buy the yearbook with their kid in it, right? You're
yeah. Do
you're
you really
selling,
love your child if you haven't bought
yeah,
this? Really?
exactly. Like you have to do it, right? So we talked about your kind of first foray into marketing, and that seemed to go really successfully, which is not always the case. I'm sure along that path you had some instances that didn't go as planned. What were some of those that where you got your teeth kicked in rather than the business, flourished immediately?
I've got one particularly visceral moment that I can recall. So you're right. I'd gone from taking part in Young Enterprise, going to uni, doing a gap year, rolling in from one job to another, step up, step up, step up. And the problem with continued success is that it's really easy to believe your own hype. And be a little bit arrogant here. And I recall I got offered a role essentially as heading up a marketing department. I was like, I've made it. Absolutely, absolutely made it. Aren't I brilliant? And so my first 3 to 6 months were absolutely golden because they were a very immature marketing setup, not really looking at anything digital. So there was lots for me as a digital native to come in and go, well, that needs to be modernized. What I hadn't realized is that that wasn't the job. The job was to lead and build a team, to have people believing in our overall mission, to have the rest of the business on side and working with us as well. I still treated it like tactical delivery. I was very functional about it, and I just didn't bring people on board. I didn't bring people on the journey. I was getting nowhere. My CEO was frustrated with me. I didn't really understand why. After a couple of years, I decided, okay, I need to move on. This is just horrible on so many levels. I spent a good year kicking myself for a bit afterwards, so licking my wounds, so asking, well, have I peaked? Was this
Yeah,
role
was that
before?
it?
Is that as good as it's ever gonna get? Am I a bit of a shit marketer here? What really went wrong? Now I've since picked myself back up and clearly, and what I'm able to look back now and go, well, do you know what? We did make some really good progress. We did we did increase our reach. We did increase revenue. We did pockets of really, really good stuff. But was I a marketing leader then? No. Yeah, I think part of the problem stems from when I looked at previous managers that I'd had. Yeah, and you emulate to a degree. They made it look really, really easy. And I've learned since that it is anything but.
Couldn't agree more with that, Dave. Especially earlier in your career and, taking on such a big role. And one of the challenges that I always speak to colleagues and stuff is let don't let the highs get too high and don't let the lows get too low because in marketing you're going to have really successful moments and you're also going to have campaigns that don't perform and you can't let that impact your psyche overall for a long period of time, right?
I think if I was to hop in a time machine now, though, and go back, I think knowing what I know now, I would probably have a very different discussion before going into that role and go, do you know what? I'm really, really flattered that you want me in that position. However, there are probably a few areas where I think I need to develop still and go into it on that basis rather than thinking I had to go in all chest puffed out, pretending that I know absolutely everything and this is really easy. This is really easy stuff. We just need to do this, this, and this. But I think that comes with age and confidence. I try not to beat myself up about it too much. Andy,
What would you say was the biggest lesson you took from that as like a high school, secondary school, endeavor that you take with you in your career today?
that it's not a bad thing to enjoy making money and that being a motivator. I think we spend so much time, particularly over here in the UK, I know all the jokes about the British here, and it's true. We will dance around the subject like ballerinas, and we'll talk about anything but, oh, I quite like making money. And I've made peace with that. It's not the sole driver behind things, nor do I hide from it either. I think that was quite a big learning for me.
I think in today's society, I think we conflate, the hyper wealthy with anything that has to do with money and what they kind of have taken advantage of some of the systems and have made it frowned upon to be. at a smaller scale and still enjoy making money. Because I think we have to be careful to distinguish between someone being motivated and making money and then what they choose to do with that money. Obviously, you can be a bad person with any amount of money, but just the art of making it and providing a service for your community, country, town is not inherently a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. As with anything, we tend to take extremes these days because that's what writes the headlines, right?
We sure
What
do.
as we kind of get more into the nitty gritty of actual marketing, because have started very early and have been in that field for a long time. And I feel like marketing is one of those things that I see a lot of people come in and out of the industry from time to time, where a lot of people have an early draw because they want to do an ad and they think, oh, I have all these great ideas. And then a lot of people get into the field and realize, oh, this is actually a lot of data crunching, a lot of analytics. It's not all the sexy stuff that's on the TV. So I personally have seen a lot of people enter and leave this career. What do you kind of find is the biggest key takeaways from talking about, like, let's talk about audience targeting, for example? How do you approach, you described in your initial business, hey, we knew that the parents were the target audience, which was a very key driver in your success there. But when you talk more generally, how do you kind of approach that initial strategy of what is our target audience?
I've been on a little bit of a journey with this one over the over the years. Let me start with personas and buyer personas, really. I was sort of weaned on HubSpot's view of inbound marketing, which was all very, let's talk about 3 or 4 buyer personas. Let's talk about pouring them into a sales funnel. What I soon started to learn, and particularly when I moved into working in management consulting and professional services more than anything, is that human beings are messy. We're full of contradictions. This whole archetype of, well, the CFO only cares about numbers. I have met many people in finance who are very good and very astute. So I found that a lot of the way we even think about segmenting our audience is often inherently flawed because we try to fit things in neat little boxes. Fundamentally, when it comes to audience targeting, I want to see the business plan. What have we articulated to investors? Where is the business seeing and predicting? Okay, so if we are targeting mid-market banks, I'll just make something up here. What's our total addressable market? How is that broadly segmented? How do we then look at the total addressable market? Who do we already know within that sphere? And starting to get a real sense of, okay, how much of a mountain have we got to climb to even reach this market? How much do we need to prioritize the allocation of resource to tackle that particular market segment versus any others? And actually, we've got a pretty easy path to revenue with that particular client segment. Or we go, oh, well, actually, the market seems to be shrinking here. There's not that much appetite for people switching service providers or whatever. But it's really just aligning yourself with the business first and foremost, and not
Absolutely.
taking and not taking that intrinsic view of, well, I've got 20 products here to sell. Everyone's got a sales target on them, right? How can I ram that down your
Right.
throat?
You touched on a really interesting point when you kind of role played having finance come to you and say, well, what's going to be the output of this? What do we need to hit? And I find in my career, when you have that either owner or finance professional in the organization, like trying to assign a strict value to marketing, it gets challenging because you don't always know. I've always tried to have that conversation with the finance professionals or the owners of the business that it's not always exactly predictable. I can give you a best and worst case scenario. Best case, you become a multi-billion dollar company overnight. But I've seen tons of marketing campaigns that don't produce what we think they will because the creative didn't resonate, the budget didn't align, market shifts, trends change. Like a lot of things are outside your control as a marketer. So what kind of advice would you have for maybe marketers starting their career that are, conversing with the finance team and having to relay how they predict things will go?
I like to work in ranges. You mentioned it just then. What's the best case, worst case? I think you also need to level with the business sometimes. Are you prepared to lose your investment? Are we prepared for this not to work?
Uh-huh.
Because it may not work. I think this needs to be couched in a sort of 80-20 rule. It's the idea of there's a certain percentage of stuff that we know generally lands well in the market. We know it produces the right results, whether that be growing audience share or qualified leads or whatever the metric is. But we need to try new things. But trying new things also means that sometimes that won't work. I think not trying to bullshit around it.
I've always felt that marketing under promising and over delivering is gonna go a long ways for you. I had a vendor the other day pitch us some solution to add to our stack, and they're like, "Hey, we have clients on this that are generating a 22x ROAS." And up until that point, I was relatively interested in the product, but as soon as they told me 22x, I was like, "This meeting's over." I was like, "This just became smoke and mirrors instantaneously to me
Oh, I
because."
love I love ROAS because it's okay. 22x ROAS. Okay, is that with existing clients? Is that
Right.
new client? It's come on, give me the stuff behind that. Otherwise, I will not believe you.
Yeah, and the client example they used, they had spent 100,000 over 6 months. I was like, why didn't they go to the bank and get a $10 million loan and pump into this if they're making it? They could just be retargeting, subscription customers that were already going to purchase anyways. You can manipulate those numbers so easily, right?
You need to have quite a cynical mind with these things as
Uh-huh.
well. I mean, I'd like to think I'm an inherently positive person most of the time, but when it comes to claims like that, I always look at it. Well, is that true? Can you show me the workings? And if you can't, then bye bye.
But it's proprietary AI now, right? It's all AI. We can't show you. It's AI. And that's something I'm sure you've probably seen quite a bit. Why don't we kind of switch gears and talk about that a little bit? I know we all have our opinions about AI, especially in marketing these days. And I'm just kind of curious, we see all the reports that whether it be the students in school or the companies are just using AI, we see this wide range of applications. Do you see a productive role for AI in marketing, or do you think it still has room to grow?
Oh, that's a big question, isn't it? So where can I start with this? I am overall reasonably positive about the impact of AI. I think the capabilities of AI in its current form have been overblown. Although I do look at that with a slightly cynical eye. I mean, the first piece was when the 2025 HubSpot Trends report landed. I had a flick through that and found it quite disturbing, just the extent to which HubSpot, who I typically hold in quite high esteem when it comes to doing the right thing for customers, seem to have produced a long form advert for AI, particularly their AI. It just didn't really sit right with me. It was just turn over the keys to us and everything will be fine. And it's actually what prompted me to record a discussion on, I can mention my podcast. I had a discussion on AI with people at two very different ends of their career. One, quite a senior marketer, been in the game for a couple of decades, and someone who had been in marketing for maybe 1-2 years. I think part of the problem at the moment is people like you and me who can come and use particular AI platforms, we've got a nose for what good and not so good looks like because we've spent years or decades, really hands on the wheel, doing all the crap jobs, but really understanding and learning how things work and are put together. We are in danger with a lot of the AI tools now, which go, well, just take all that away. You don't need to think about it. You want a piece of blog content? Click your fingers. You want to run some statistical analysis? Sure, just plug it in. We've potentially got a whole generation who aren't going to develop that nose and sixth sense in quite the same way that we've had. And we're all gleefully pulling the ladder up behind them. And that particular generation and cohort, from conversations I've had, are really quite thoughtful and concerned about this. But we're in this culture at the moment where if you're not cheerleading for AI, should you really be in marketing?
Right.
You're seen as a dinosaur or a little bit of a Luddite. I think we do need to be really protective about how we build the right skills within marketers to use this stuff well. Otherwise, 10, 20 years, hopefully, hopefully when some of us start retiring,
Right.
there's going to be a skills collapse. And we're going to wonder what the hell went wrong. And we can point back to this particular moment.
I agree. And to your point about the HubSpot report, I get ads for everything under the sun. Oh, just let AI do it. AI do your blog post, do your website, do your social. And I think about, what that looks like in 5 to 10 years. Is to your point, are we just going to have our whole slew of options of businesses all just be AIs competing with each other? And then do you just make your decisions based off which AI speaks better? Where's that human interaction to truly differentiate yourself if every plumber in town is using the same AI to market itself? What does that look like? And that's a scary thought to me.
I see it as a race to the middle here.
Yeah.
The bar gets raised, but when AI is trained on broadly the same material, is being asked the same things broadly by the same kinds of people, it ain't going to innovate, is it? Surely not. You don't get innovation out of that.
So much of some of the most successful marketing campaigns of all time have been new, exciting, a new slogan, a new spot, a line of spots that all play off each other that catch people's attention. And if AI is just ingesting data of this historical performance, how does it innovate like that? And so, with all that being said, let me try to narrow it down a little bit. When you think about all these external influences, AI being a key one, what would you tell either some junior entry level marketers or people in school, uni that are about to graduate? What are the skills that you think are going to take them forward in the next generation of marketers as us old blokes like you and I start to retire, hopefully?
If we're talking about the skills to protect, I think critical thinking really has to be up there. Yeah, but just asking the questions of, right, well, who or what has a vested interest in me believing that particular piece of insight? Developing that bit of a journalistic nose here, but also having the ability to communicate and present your ideas to humans. Yeah, it sounds quite dystopian when I say it like that, but yeah, it's one thing to have AI spit out a whole bunch of stuff, but then getting in front of a bunch of senior people and understanding their own biases and experiences and having to pitch an idea. So looking
Yeah,
at, yeah, communicating how we are making evidence-based decisions, but not completely turning the whole thing over to AI. I
I agree. My personal experience, if you can start it yourself and then use AI as a supplemental resource, like, hey, I have this slogan, give me 10 other ways to say the slogan. But if you're the one leading that charge, you can still have that creativity and that differentiation just with AI as a tool, not as the leader in that.
So about a week or so ago, I built a virtual advisory board in ChatGPT and gave it a whole bunch of prompts and archetypes around building a really balanced advisory board who can help me challenge or look at particular ideas or concepts from about five different directions, but in the manner at which, if you're used to going into a board or advisory board, sort of presenting an idea, having that go around the table, and then the chair synthesizing that and going, well, actually, from what I've heard, you might want to look at this or challenge that, or not sure that's quite ready to come out of the oven yet. And yeah, it's shown some promise. It's certainly no substitute for having real experienced people who you can talk to and bounce ideas off. But as a supplementary piece to go, well, actually, I've got a few ideas in my head. Let's fire up Dave's virtual advisory board and just workshop that a little bit.
I love that.
That's had value.
I I love that. And especially as an entrepreneur myself and having the opportunity to have met lots of other entrepreneurs like yourself, sometimes it can be working at odd hours of the night and things like that where you don't necessarily have someone just to quickly run ideas by. And hey, ChatGPT never goes to sleep. It's always sitting there willing to have a conversation with you and just can keep the stream of consciousness going at times in a supplemental way. I've got a few last rapid fire questions for you. What is one trend you wish would die?
One trend I wish would die: the relentless quest for attribution, particularly marketing attribution. There are so many different models that I could make it say whatever I want. I could either blow smoke up marketing's arse or completely demolish the whole piece. I think it's just a wasted endeavor, which just distracts us from business performance.
When I get asked about the attribution piece, I say the best way always and forever to determine attribution is to look at your P&L. So it
For
is a
every
scary
pound
world.
of Yeah, and for every pound or dollar that we spend on marketing, how much does the business make?
Exactly.
Yes, you could get behind the scenes and look at channel performance and stuff to figure out, other bits that aren't quite working. But fundamentally, I think that's what matters.
What's the first thing you'd ban in every marketing deck?
Ban two things, please. Is that all
Okay.
right?
I approved,
I know
approved,
I'm
approved.
I'm being cheeky, but I feel really strongly about this. Number one, the stupid sea of client logos. We work with Nestle, and actually, it's some subsidiary in Antarctica that we
Yeah.
did a logo design for once in a blue moon, but never actually got anywhere.
Hmm.
It, I, it doesn't really speak to buyers that much, and if they really care, then they'll ask or find out. The second one I would ban, funnel diagrams that don't really reflect real human behavior or behavior in the context of a client segment. It's just buyers aren't liquid. We don't pour them
Yeah.
down and stuff comes out. It's it's messy, it's chaotic. Yes, we do our best to try and move people along, but I I think we undersell sometimes just how hard this stuff is.
I think it goes back to that difficulty in marketing of yes, there is so much analytics and so much data, but you can never leave out the human factor. You can say, oh yeah, 37% of people interact with this ad and then convert. To your point, is it the same? Like, how does that change, with the seasons, with the time? If they see the creative, like there's so many other variables that go into a simple at face value marketing equation, right?
Yeah, and it's helpful to articulate how some of this stuff works, but let's not kid ourselves that you can make someone go from one stage, awareness to consideration. They do it when they're damn well ready. Our job is to help that process be as smooth as possible, and when the time comes, to choose us over a competitor.
Yeah. All fascinating stuff, Dave. But love to continue the conversation sometime. And I want to drill in on AI. Maybe we just have an annual check-in to see if AI has replaced us and we still even have jobs every year. And we hope for the best. But
I'll become more and more robotic each year.
yeah,
In today's
right.
rapidly evolving world, AI is really important.
Yeah. Well, maybe next time we talk, I'll see a little robot make your tea and refresh your tea throughout the conversation.
Well,
But
I haven't run out,
oh,
which is
you're
good. You've
good.
kept me talking so much, I haven't had the opportunity to drink it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Dave, really appreciate your time today, and we'll catch up soon, my man.
Thank you so much.